The Darkness Within, a Harry Potter sequel. Chapter 1. Harry's scar had not hurt for 19 years. All was well. All was well. At least, that was what he told himself, and what he told his wife every time she asked. She asked often. As the train pulled away, Harry could no longer hold a happy expression, and his smile faded. Ginny took Lily's hand, and together the three of them turned away from the platform and passed through the nearest flu network. Lily's obliviousness was somewhat effective in removing the strain once they arrived home. She skipped around the house, her sadness at being left behind while her brother's journey to Hogwarts evaporated. Ginny waited until Lily had left the room, then turned to Harry and pulled him towards her, taking his face in her hands. "We have to keep an eye on her," she said. "The house will be quieter now." Harry took her hands and lifted them away. "She's a tough girl. She'll be okay." Ginny shook her head. "I remember what it was like when my brothers went to Hogwarts, and it was just my parents and I in the house. I was so lonely. I counted down the days until they came back. Even though they never included me, I would rather have had them there." Harry paused, then finally said, "We'll take her out more." "Today?" Ginny asked, her expression hopeful. "Not today. I have to get some work done." Ginny's expression changed, a touch of anger showing. "But it's a Saturday. Take today off at least." She pulled Harry towards her and took his face in her hands again. She gently pulled him down until their foreheads touched. "We need time to process," she continued. "Albus leaving for the first time. You remember how it was with James. It's going to affect us." Harry pulled away. "I need to work." He turned and walked into his office, shutting the door behind him. His chest immediately flared with guilt, but he couldn't bring himself to go back and apologize to his wife. He didn't have the strength for it. Harry hadn't had Ginny's upbringing. He and the Dursleys had been mutually happy not to see each other for a whole school year, and they, like he, had dreaded his return each summer. Now he had a family of his own, who he actually wanted to spend time with. Every September brought a new heartache. And now Albus had gone too. Sweet, soft Albus. He was so shy, so awkward. Would he manage to make friends? What had Harry and Ginny done wrong? Why did their son not carry the Gryffindor courage? He shook his head. Neville Longbottom, his old school friend, appeared in his mind. Clumsy, bumbling Neville, whom no one thought belonged in Gryffindor, ended up surprising everyone in his final year at Hogwarts, displaying bravery that inspired them all. Albus would be fine. It wasn't really Albus that Harry was worried about, he knew. He would miss his sons dearly, but even when they were home, he still missed them. Ginny stormed into Harry's office, slamming the door behind her. "Enough," she said, her voice carrying a steely edge. "What?" Harry asked. "You know what, Harry. We need to talk about what's going on with you." Harry sat at his desk and picked up a quill. "There's nothing going on with me." Ginny slapped her hand on the desk, making all papers upon it shake. Harry looked up at her. They stared at each other. After several seconds, she spoke. "You have nightmares. There are things you haven't dealt with, and these things stop you from being there for your family." Harry's temper flared. "Not being there? I work day and night to protect you and the children. There's still evil out there, Ginny. There always will be, and I have to keep it away from you all. That's all that matters." "That is not all that matters. Your children need your attention, your time, your love, and I need it too." Her voice broke as she added, "Where's my Harry gone?" Her eyes welled up. Harry softened at seeing a tear work his way down her cheek. He lowered his eyes back to his desk. I can't sleep. When I do, I see things." "What things?" she asked. He stayed silent. She turned his face towards her. "What things?" He opened his mouth. No sound came out. Ginny leaned in and kissed him. A warmth flooded Harry's body. He felt it travel from his lips, down his body, to where his heart was pumping his blood. His pulse quickened, the heavy heartbeat drawing his attention. His mind flashed to the moment when his killing spell had hit Harry squarely in the chest. He gasped and yanked his face away from Ginny's grip. He clutched his chest, struggling to breathe. His wife, his beautiful, wonderful wife, looked broken-hearted. He tried to speak, but his wheezing throat had closed shut. She backed away, staring hard at him. Only when she reached the door did she turn, and as she pushed it open, said, "I want you to talk to someone." After she left, Harry let his head collapse into his hands. After a whole minute, he opened a drawer, pulled out the top sheet of paper and stared at the writing on it. He rubbed his scar, more out of habit than anything else. Ginny climbed out of the Granger Weasley fireplace and wiped down her daughter's dress. Hermione wandered into the kitchen. "Ginny," she said, "this is a nice surprise. We didn't expect you until tomorrow." She paused as she took in Ginny's expression. "What's wrong?" Ginny knelt down beside Lily. "Why don't you go and see what Hugo's up to? Maybe he can teach you how to de-gnome the garden." "Yay," said Lily, skipping off into the house. As soon as her daughter was out of sight, Ginny visibly sank, leaning on the sideboard to steady herself. Hermione patted her shoulder. "Would you like a cup of tea?" "How long has he been like this?" Hermione asked, as Ginny lifted the tea to her mouth and grimaced from the heat. She pulled out her wand and tapped the top of the mug. The tea fizzed, then settled, and she took a sip. "A few months now," Ginny replied, "soon after he started the new job." "Being head of department takes its toll," said Hermione. "Ask Ronald how moody I was when I was first promoted. He won't tell you, but I have no doubt he complained to Harry about it." "But it's not just that," said Ginny. "The promotion may have been a trigger, but I think he's keeping a lot buried. Maybe something has made it resurface. Has something happened at the ministry, maybe?" Hermione shook her head, so Ginny continued. "Well, do you ever have trouble sleeping? Does Ron?" Hermione sighed. "Of course. We all took lives, Ginny. Justifiably, perhaps, but we killed. Perhaps we didn't tear our souls apart, but we are not innocent." She took a deep breath. Sometimes I see their faces. The people who stared at me as I killed them. It's a burden we all have to live with. But Harry, he played a bigger part than most." Ginny stared at her feet. "I wish I knew how to help him. He won't open up. That's why I came here." She looked up at Hermione. "I thought, if he won't talk to me, maybe he'll talk to you two." Hermione snorted. "I doubt it. He's always been stubborn, too proud to admit something's bothering him. But perhaps," she looked outside, watching Lily and Hugo chasing and being chased by garden gnomes. "I have an idea." Harry sat at his desk, scribbling out a letter to be issued to his whole team, the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. He did his best to convey a sense of urgency without spreading panic. He finished the last sentence and read it aloud. "Finally, I must stress again that this information must be kept absolutely secret until I've stated otherwise. Talk to no one outside of the department, not even your families, about what is written in this letter." He was signing his name when something massive swept past the window, drawing his gaze. He glanced at the clock on the wall. 8 o'clock at night. Who would be sending an owl at this hour? The mass flew right up to the window. It was no owl. It was his best friend, Ron Weasley, sat atop a flying broomstick. Harry hastily picked up his wand and tapped its point on the letter. The paper went blank. "All right, Harry," Ron called, his voice muffled by the glass. Harry flicked his wand at the window. It swung open. "Bit late, mate," Harry said. "Everything okay?" "You tell me," Ron replied. "Fancy a fly?" Harry sighed. "Did Ginny say something?" "I try not to involve myself in our wives' chats," Ron said, laughing. "Hermione told me to come, so here I am." Harry felt the breeze on his face and was tempted to say yes to Ron's offer. When had he last flown? It had been months. But he had so much work to— "I know what you're thinking," Ron added, interrupting his thoughts. "You're thinking you're too busy. Well, I run the most successful joke shop in the country and the school year has just started. Don't talk to me about busy. Every student in Hogwarts is sending us postal orders." Harry opened his mouth to reply, and Ron cut him off. "Get your broomstick, Harry," he said. As Harry soared high into the air, then turned his broomstick downwards into a dive, he was back in Hogwarts, playing Quidditch for Gryffindor. Should have turned professional, he thought to himself, not for the first time. Whenever the stress of his job threatened to overwhelm him, he daydreamed of the life he could have had, playing the sport he loved. There was no doubt he had the talent as a seeker to play full-time. but he had chosen instead to fight the dark arts. It was a worthy cause, but sometimes, if he was honest with himself, he wished. "So, Potter," said Ron, speeding up to match his pace as they rose from the dive together. "What's on your mind?" Harry battled with himself. Besides the dark turn his thoughts had taken in recent months, there was also this new piece of information, discovered only days ago. There was no one in the world, besides Ginny, he could trust more than Ron and Hermione. But he knew that if he told Ron anything, Ron would discuss it with his wife. Even as Minister for Magic, Hermione was not yet privy to the intelligence that Harry had. Harry was given a free rein over his department, and this particular information, well, the world was not yet ready for it. "It's just stress," said Harry. "Ginny's overreacting." "No one can say she doesn't occasionally do that," said Ron, laughing. "But, mate, do you think Hermione and me don't notice how you behave sometimes? You're moody, you always look tired, you drift off. It's like when he was in your head." "Don't say it," Harry cut in. "It's nothing like that. I'm the head of the department, Ron. Not every job is as fun-filled as running a joke shop." Harry immediately regretted what he'd said as he looked at Ron's hurt expression. Ron recovered quickly. "I bring joy to people," said Ron. "Dumbledore would have said something like, 'There is no worthier calling.' You going to stop being a prick and open up?" Harry flew close to Ron and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're right. I'm sorry. What you and George do is incredible. And right now, I'd much rather be doing it." "Has something happened?" Ron asked. His face was turning white. Harry saw the fear in his own heart reflected in Ron's eyes. No, nothing serious. Just normal, everyday aura stuff." Ron did not look away. Harry needed to divert him, so he decided on half of the truth. "Sometimes, old memories just pop back into my head. You know how it is." Ron sighed. "Of course, I know." He rubbed his chest, the point where Harry knew a Horcrux had once sat on a necklace. "Sometimes, it feels like I'm still wearing it." Harry nodded. "And sometimes I see his face, not just in dreams, in the daytime." Ron sniggered. "Well, it's not easy to forget. He was an ugly bastard." Harry burst out laughing. Their broomsticks swept off course as they put their arms around each other's shoulders, trying to steady themselves as they howled. When the laughing died down, Harry said, "But, mate, and this is going to sound crazy, sometimes I miss those days." "The glory days," Ron yelled. "Who wouldn't? Things felt simpler. We had a job to do, and we did it. Being an adult, well, that's just no fun at all. Can't imagine how the muggles do it, without magic to help them with laundry. But Harry, you've got to open up, mate." Harry nodded, but said nothing. Ron added, "Doesn't have to be to me, but talk to Ginny. The number of times Hermione and I have just sat and cried together. And it helped. It really helped." Still Harry said nothing. "Mate," Ron said, "when you married my sister, you agreed to love and honour her, or something. Would you want her to talk to you if she was struggling?" "Of course," said Harry quickly. Ron patted his shoulder. "Then you know what you need to do." When Ron left for home, Harry flew around by himself for a while. He rose until he was surrounded by clouds, his face filling with moisture. He could feel his lungs struggling against the reduced oxygen, but he continued to climb. Eventually, he passed through the cloud canopy and pulled his broom to a stop, hovering in place above the fluffy masses. It was a full moon, bright and massive. He stared at it for a few minutes, thinking of his deceased friend and mentor, Remus Lupin. Remus wouldn't have enjoyed this view, Harry thought sadly. When Harry dismounted his broom on his front lawn and headed for the front door, he felt lighter than he had in months. The stress, the dark memories, the looming threat, none of it was going away anytime soon. But Ron had reminded him of his greatest weapon against the evils of the world, the people whom he loved and who loved him. They were stronger together. Maybe it was time to include them in the fight. It was late, and Lily was already in bed. Ginny was in the kitchen. Harry crept past her, heading up the stairs to his daughter's bedroom. He took soft steps to her bedside and stood watching her for a few seconds as she slept peacefully. He planted a gentle kiss on her forehead, then exited the room as quietly as he could. Then he headed back downstairs and marched into the kitchen. Ginny looked up as he entered, her shoulders slumped and her expression distraught. He strode to her and pulled her towards him. "What?" she began, then Harry kissed her. They kissed as they hadn't kissed for far too long. She melted into his arms, grabbing his hair and pulling him closer. Every cell in Harry's body electrified, as it had when he first kissed her, all those years ago. After several minutes, they finally parted lips, but their faces remained pressed together. "Welcome back," Ginny whispered, breathing heavily. Harry stroked her cheek. "I'm going to tell you everything," he said. Chapter 2. Harry held nothing back. As he sat facing his wife at the kitchen table, he told her how, for months, he had felt a looming sense of doom, of darkness approaching. His nightmares had changed. They had never stopped, not in the 19 years since the Battle of Hogwarts, but lately they had taken on a more vivid appearance. It was as if the part of his mind that had spoken to Dumbledore in the station was trying to communicate with him. There was a part of him that had walked on the edge of death and saw more than the rest of him. No magic had been able to recreate or replicate that state. His reaction to these things had been to double down on his work, to do his utmost to keep his family safe. And then, earlier that week, he had received news which confirmed his worst fears. He wondered if the dark thoughts, the animated nightmares, had somehow unconsciously foretold its coming. An old darkness was creeping back into their world. Something had gone wrong. Ginny sat back in her chair and took a deep breath in through her nose. "And no one else knows about this?" she asked. "Only the ones in my department who made the discovery." She stood up and paced the kitchen. "We need to tell the Order." "The Order? Ginny, the only people who knew are the Order. There's someone in there we can't trust." She turned to him. "Goodness, we tell Ron and Hermione then." Harry nodded. "I've already tested them both. They're themselves. I just didn't..." "Didn't what, Harry?" Harry stood up and put his hands on her shoulders. "I didn't want to involve you all. You've suffered so much and..." "Harry James Potter," Ginny said, throwing her arms around his neck. "I'm your wife, and Ron and Hermione are your family. We suffer together. No more keeping things to yourself." Harry began to mumble a response, refusing to meet her eyes. She nudged his chin up with her nose until he looked at her. "You don't have to deal with everything on your own. Deal?" Harry kissed her again. "Deal. We'll tell them tomorrow." That night, Harry was again plagued by nightmares. In this particular dream, he felt Pettigrew's silver hand on his throat. He couldn't breathe. Once a great friend of his father's, Pettigrew had betrayed James in the worst way possible, and then he had tried to kill his son. He saw Dobby's sombre face as the tiny elf lay dying. His expression displayed no regret for his sacrifice, but he was sad all the same, as it dawned on him that he would never see his friends again. He saw the giant statue of Salazar Slytherin in the Chamber of Secrets, the basilisk slithering from its open mouth. The giant snake hissed and turned to fire. From within the fire, Voldemort's haunting face appeared, sneering at Harry. He opened his mouth wide and howled with laughter, the dreadful sound echoing in Harry's ears as he jerked awake. He was twisted within the bed covers, and Ginny had her hands on his shoulders. She had been shaking him, trying to pull him from the nightmare. Harry felt a wave of fury wash over him, remnants of the time he and Voldemort had shared a mind, and Voldemort's emotions had affected his own. Voldemort was gone, but the mental scars he'd left had not healed. Perhaps they never would. Harry locked eyes with his wife, and after a few seconds, the anger faded. They both sat breathing heavily. "These dreams," said Ginny. Are they trying to tell you something?" "Could be," said Harry, "but I don't think so. I'm no Trelawney." The memory of their wacky teacher had them chuckling. Ginny laid down and Harry rested his head on her chest, focusing on her heartbeat to calm him. "Just a dream, dear," she said, stroking his hair. Harry hoped she was right. As he drifted back to sleep, he reflected on what she had said. He had, he thought, met death, and passed closer to the edge than any living person should have. Could he now see? Harry and Ginny apparated into the Weasley Granger front garden. The couple had built their own house a short distance from Ron's family home, and there was a stark difference. Whereas the Weasley family house looked as if it had been continuously added to, with little forward thinking, Ron and Hermione's house was sleek and well designed. Hermione had surely taken the lead when planning its layout, Harry thought. Hermione was busy cooking Sunday lunch, or rather, her wand was doing the cooking, while she buried her nose in a thick book. It was rare for the Minister for Magic to have time off, and Hermione used it predominantly to do two things: spend time with her family and read. She stood up when Ginny entered and beamed at the sight of her holding Harry's hand. Her smile faded when she saw how grave they both looked. "Oh God, what's happened now?" she said. Harry waited until Ron and Hermione were sat in their living room, with cups of tea in their hands, before he began. At first, he perched on the edge of the sofa, but as soon as he started speaking, he stood up and began his usual habit of pacing. "The Elder Wand has been stolen," he said. He paused and turned to his friends to gauge their reaction. They were both shocked, but he could see Hermione's quick mind already figuring out what that meant. "Someone within the Order," she said. A few seconds later, Ron caught on. "Impossible," he said. "There's no one in there I wouldn't trust with my life." "Nevertheless," said Ginny, "it's happened." Hermione raised herself from the sofa and faced Harry. Her demeanour changed. The Minister for Magic, not his friend, was now standing in front of him. "How long have you known?" she asked. "The Aurors we stationed there were killed a week ago," Harry replied. "I searched the hiding place myself. It's gone. We've been trying to track the thief, but with the Elder Wand, well, it's easy for them to hide." Hermione's expression hardened. "Why wasn't I informed of this immediately, Harry?" Harry met her gaze. "The less people who knew, the better. Only a handful in my department are aware. We didn't want rumours to start spreading, or to let the thief know we were onto them." Hermione huffed. "I knew I should have put my own people onto it. Your department is stretched too thin, and—" She stopped talking when she saw Harry's expression. "I didn't mean... It's just, you all have a lot going on, with the World Cup coming. We could handle it, Hermione. We were prepared for every eventuality, except betrayal. No one outside of the Order, except for the Aurors responsible for the Wand's protection, knew where it was. Those Aurors are now dead." Silence filled the room. Harry continued. "We don't want to jump to quick conclusions. For all we know, someone in the Order let the location slip by mistake, or had too much to drink and blurted it out." "Well," said Ron, "there's only one thing for it. We call the Order together. If someone doesn't show up, we know it was them." "The Order hasn't met for years," said Ginny. "If we call them, it might alert whoever the thief is. Then they'll run, and we may never catch them. We need a more subtle approach." "What do you suggest?" Ron replied. Ginny exchanged a glance with Harry. "We invite them to visit, in small groups. We don't involve the Ministry, at least not yet." "And then what?" said Hermione. "Put Veritaserum in their tea?" "Exactly," said Harry. Hermione's eyebrows jumped up. "Harry, I was joking. The use of Veritaserum is strictly regulated. I'm not going to authorise—" "Hermione," Harry interrupted. "This is the Elder Wand. Have you forgotten what it can do? In the wrong hands. Even in the right hands, it can't be controlled. It can't be destroyed, and it can't be trusted. Using a bit of unauthorised Veritaserum is the least of our problems. That, combined with your spell, and we should be able to narrow it down until we find them. It's going to take time, and we don't have it, but we don't have a choice." Hermione sat down. She had developed a spell some years ago which revealed whether a person was under the Imperious Curse, without them or their controller becoming aware. It had ferreted out the lies of many of Voldemort's supporters who insisted they were not acting of their own free will. The Exposier spell had become a critical tool in the capture of dark witches and wizards. "We're talking about manipulating our friends," said Hermione. Harry shrugged. "Do you see any other way? It's been a long time since we all fought together. People change." Hermione opened her mouth, then closed it again. Harry continued. "I'm not suggesting evil intent. Maybe someone is in a bad place and they were desperate. Maybe they aren't thinking straight and they need our help. But we can't help them unless we know why they took it and where they are now." They all looked at Hermione. As Minister for Magic, she had the authority to overrule their plan. As their friend, she knew there was no one in the world she could trust more than the people in that room. After a few painstaking moments, she nodded. Who should we start with? She asked. The process of finding the truth would be a painstaking one, Harry knew. They risked alienating their friends, or worse, causing them to come to harm. They created a plan to eliminate any involvement, one person at a time. Many of the Order were living quiet, retired lives, and so it would be easy to coax into a visit. However, since some of the members currently worked at Hogwarts and the school year had started, Harry would also have to visit the castle. Monday night arrived, and first on the list were Molly and Arthur Weasley. Harry was bad at acting, and decided his best tactic would be to say as little as possible during the dinner, to avoid giving anything away. Ginny, Hermione and Molly chattered away while Arthur questioned Harry about his new role. Now retired, it was clear that Arthur missed the hustle and bustle of the ministry. "First time we've hosted the Cup since I took you all as children," Arthur said. "The team's working hard on security, I imagine." "Very hard," Harry replied. "We don't want to be embarrassed again. I've insisted, no muggles involved. I keep telling Hermione all those memory charms can't be good for the brain, but she insists it's harmless." Arthur nodded. "Yes, well, for their own sake, it's better if they're left out. They've got enough problems of their own these days, what with, what do you call it, the Facebooks and so on." Harry chuckled. "Something like that." Harry and Hermione waved their wands to clear the table, while Ron showed everyone a new toy he and George had developed, a pair of socks, one of which would disappear after a few hours and reappear somewhere else in the house. "Great idea for a Christmas gift," said Ron. "We based the idea on leprechaun gold, except the sock will always come back. In most cases." Molly tutted her disapproval while Harry and Ginny moved into the kitchen to prepare tea and cake. As the Weasley parents were distracted by Ron, Hermione jabbed her wand in their direction. An almost imperceptible beam of white light rose from the tops of their heads for a second, then disappeared. She nodded to Harry behind their backs. They were acting under their own free will. Ginny carefully poured 3 drops of Verita serum into her parents' teacups, while Harry stood guard at the kitchen door. As she waved her wand and the teas rose into the air, she paused. "This feels wrong, Harry," she said. "Testing my parents." "We aren't accusing them," Harry replied. "We just need to know if they told anyone without meaning to. Once we're sure they haven't, we needn't involve them anymore." Ginny sighed and swished her wand towards the living room. The teas flew towards the table and planted themselves on the coasters. Molly immediately took a sip, but Arthur was too distracted by Ron. My, you boys certainly have an active imagination. You seem much happier at the shop than you were as an Auror, Ron." He picked up his tea. Harry tried not to stare at it. "And I know it's a great comfort to George to have his brother working with him," Arthur continued, gesturing with the tea and spilling a little. "Oops, silly me, clumsy in my old age." He lifted the tea to his lips, then paused, noticing the intense way Ron stared at it. "What's the matter, Ron? Haven't put something in my tea, have you? Haha." Hermione kicked Ron under the table. He grunted and feigned a laugh. "Of course not, Dad. Only in Mum's tea." He grinned sheepishly. Arthur chuckled and poured some tea into his mouth. Hermione immediately sprang into action. "Arthur, Molly, there's something we need to discuss with you. The Elder Wand. You haven't told anybody where it was hidden, have you? Intentionally or otherwise?" The married couple's reactions were vastly different. At first, they both blurted out, "No!" as if involuntarily. Then Arthur's expression was one of shock, and he shook his head slowly. Molly, on the other hand, grew angry and slammed her hand on the table. "Hermione Jean Granger, are you accusing us of betrayal?" "No, Mum, she wasn't," Ron said, leaping in. "We just thought, by accident, maybe." "Accident? How dare you? I have belonged to the Order since before you were born, young man. Be very careful." Arthur leaned over to his wife and took her hand. Now, Molly, don't jump down their throats. I'm sure they have a very good reason to ask us such questions." He looked from his children to Hermione and finally to Harry. Molly also turned to him. "Well?" she asked. Harry did not answer immediately. He had not planned to tell anyone what had happened beyond those who already knew, but now he thought about it, it was impossible not to without causing offence. He sighed. Molly and Arthur had passed all their tests. They were not the culprits. "The Elder Wand has been stolen," he said. "We don't expect you to help in finding it, but you know what it means as well as we do." Molly gasped and sat down. Arthur returned to shaking his head. Eventually, he said, "I knew the peace wouldn't last." Chapter 3. The interrogations of the rest of the Weasley family had similar outcomes. George, Bill, Fleur, Charlie, and Percy expressed a mixture of surprise and offence at the revelation that they were being questioned under Veritaserum. Once they fully understood the danger presented, however, they let go of their anger and unanimously offered their support. All were shown to be innocent. Harry asked them to keep their ears open, but otherwise, do nothing. "The less we reveal what we know, the better chance we have of finding the thief," he repeated to them all. Kingsley Shacklebolt came next. Now an old man, he rarely left his house, and spent the majority of his time reading. Harry and Ginny sent an owl to him ahead of their arrival so as not to alarm him. Kingsley was ready when they tapped on his front door and received them warmly. As he hobbled back to his living room with his walking stick for support, he gestured for them to follow. When his back was turned, Ginny waved her wand at him, and a small beam of light rose from the top of his head. The first test was complete. After a lengthy discussion, the group had agreed that the unwilling administering of a truth potion on their closest friends was not working. Additionally, it would not do to slip Kingsley, the former Minister for Magic, a potion in his own house, and they believed he would be open to taking it willingly. As they sat down in his living room, Kingsley stared at them over his cane and said, in his deep, gravelly voice, "My friends, to what do I owe the pleasure of your visit?" Ginny cleared her throat. "Unfortunately, we're not here for pleasure, Mr. Shacklebolt. Something serious has happened, and we would like your permission to, well, examine you." She explained the situation. Kingsley's expression was grave. When Ginny had finished, Harry pulled the vial of Veritaserum from his jacket and held it up for Kingsley to see. He chuckled. "But of course," he said, picking up his teacup and holding it out for them. Harry poured 3 drops of the potion into the tea, and Kingsley took a deep gulp, draining the cup, then opening his mouth to show he had swallowed. "Thank you," said Harry. He faced Kingsley directly and began. "Did you take the Elder Wand from its hiding place?" "No," Kingsley replied. "Did you speak to anyone, outside of the Order, about where the Elder Wand was hidden?" "No." "Might you have, by mistake or carelessness, let slip the location of the Elder Wand to anyone outside of the Order?" Kingsley did not answer immediately. He pointed his chin to the ceiling and closed his eyes. After 10 seconds, he opened them and stared at Harry. "No." He smiled. Harry sighed, releasing a held breath. "But," Kingsley added, "I wish it was me. I imagine I would have had a good reason, at least. Not everyone would." Harry nodded. He remembered how the Elder Wand felt in his hand. It could do things no other wand could. No one, not even Dumbledore, fully understood its capability, and he had owned it for decades. Their next and last group of suspects were all to be found at Hogwarts. Neville Longbottom was now the herbology teacher, and the Potter and Weasley children universally agreed he was one of their favourites. His wife, Luna Lovegood, was the new school matron after Madame Pomfrey retired some years prior. The children admitted that they sometimes faked being ill, or actually made themselves ill with a Weasley product, so they could visit her and ask her to tell a wild story. Professor McGonagall still retained the role of headmistress she had inherited from Dumbledore. Hagrid, although blessed with long life as a half-giant, had begun to show signs of old age in recent years. He remained the Hogwarts gamekeeper and care of magical creatures teacher, but had taken on an apprentice to assist him, a former student named Tristan Hayfield. Harry had sent owls ahead, asking the 4 Order members to meet in Hagrid's hut. As Harry and Ginny walked down the hill away from the castle, they saw Neville and Luna leave their cottage on the other side of the grounds and head towards them. As they came together, Neville pulled Harry into a hug. "All right, Harry," he asked. "What's this all about?" "I'll tell you when we've all arrived," Harry said, releasing Neville and hugging Luna. She smiled dreamily at Harry, as always making him slightly uncomfortable with her gaze, as if she could sense what secrets he was keeping. The four of them reached Hagrid's hut, on the border of the forbidden forest. Harry stared at the forest briefly, knowing all too well the dangers it concealed, then knocked on Hagrid's door and was greeted with a deep bark. "Down, Daisy," Hagrid's voice boomed from inside. "Away, ye lump." Hagrid pulled open the giant door, his other hand holding the collar of a massive black bloodhound. "All right, you lot," he said, beaming. "Been too long." He gestured them inside, and finally released Daisy, who leapt at them and gifted them with a wet lick one by one. She ran back and forth across the hut, leaping excitedly into the air. Harry had only known her father, Fang, as an old dog. He had died some years before, but his pup Daisy still had the boundless energy of youth. "Go ahead and sit down," said Hagrid, waving towards his massive table. "Tea, anyone?" The group gave their requests for various types of tea as they sat, and Hagrid placed a bowl full of rock cakes in front of them. Harry smirked. Hagrid hadn't changed. "So," said Hagrid, as he served them and took his own seat, shaking the whole hut. "Better wait for the headmistress, Harry." He winked at Harry and patted his shoulder. Harry almost received a faceful of table from the impact. A second later, a knock sounded from the door. "Good timing," said Hagrid as he stood up. He pulled the door open and Professor McGonagall stepped inside. Harry had not seen his former professor for a few years. She carried a similar air to that of Dumbledore towards the end of his life, still full of vigour but with a sense of extreme fatigue. He wondered how old she was. It would be impossible to guess. Magic had the tendency to extend a witch or wizard's life beyond that which was possible for a muggle. "Potter, Weasley, Professor Longbottom, Madam Lovegood, Hagrid," she finished, smiling warmly at them all briefly. Once a hard, cold woman, McGonagall had softened in her old age. Perhaps she felt her end was near, Harry thought. The headmistress and Hagrid took their seats. Harry took a deep breath. He was very aware that these were the last members of the Order to question. If none of them were at fault, then Harry's theories, his ideas, were all wrong. He launched into an explanation, giving them every detail of what had happened up until that point. Hagrid slammed his fist on the table and began to mutter angrily. McGonagall lowered her head and sighed, showing a look of disappointment that reminded Harry strongly of Dumbledore. Neville and Luna had the saddest reactions of all. Their faces betrayed their fear. Harry met their eyes, and he could tell that they experienced exactly what he did, even after all this time. The nightmares, the anxiety attacks, the survivor's guilt. He immediately cursed himself for having involved them. But what was done was done. He asked their permission to administer the tests. They all nodded their agreement, so he performed the exposure spell, then poured Veritaserum into their teas. Once all questions had been answered by the group, he turned to Hagrid. "My old friend," he said, clapping Hagrid's shoulder. Hagrid's eyes widened. "You know I wouldn't, Harry. Never. Do you remember our first year? Fluffy? I have to be sure." Hagrid looked deeply hurt. But, if Harry was honest with himself, Hagrid was the person he had suspected most from the beginning. He knew Hagrid would die before betraying his friends, intentionally, but he was the most likely candidate to be tricked into revealing information. It had happened before. Harry had to be sure. "Hagrid, have you spoken with anyone at all, outside of the Order, about the Elder Wand? Even in passing, is there any chance someone might have been trying to coax information from you, perhaps in a pub over a drink?" Hagrid opened his mouth to speak, but Harry cut in. "Think carefully before you answer, please." Hagrid lowered his eyebrows and stared out of the window, rubbing his beard. He was silent for a whole minute, by which time Daisy had noticed her owner was troubled. She pattered over, laid her head on his knee and began whimpering. Finally, Hagrid turned back to Harry. "Harry, I promise you, on me dad's grave, I haven't said a word to anyone outside the Order about anything. The wand, nor any other secret stuff." Harry nodded. That was enough. At the same time as being relieved, his heart sank. Where could they look now? "So, who could have taken it?" he muttered. "I don't think it was a dark wizard," said Luna. "Probably someone with a broken heart, don't you think, Neville dear?" she asked, stroking Neville's cheek. "Someone who wanted to try and fix things, and thought the wand could do the trick." "You may be right," said Harry. I mean, when I had the wand, there were definitely things. If I thought it would work, would have tried anything. His words faded out. After several seconds, Ginny grabbed his hand. Harry? Harry stood up. I know who took it. We have to leave, right now. Several Aurors, and every member of the Order who was available, those working at Hogwarts could not leave just as the school year had started, surrounded the house. It was small and humble, suiting the young man who lived there. For once, Harry's Muggle knowledge had come in handy. Everyone present had a tiny electronic earpiece fitted, allowing them to communicate quickly. It was crucial to coordinate, so if their target tried to flee, they would be able to catch him. Unless, of course, he disapparated at the first smell of trouble. Harry hoped his instinct had been right. He had no proof beyond that. If he was wrong, the boy would likely be angry for being accused. But the pieces all fit together. It had to be Teddy. Harry placed a hand to his earpiece and pressed a button. Move in, he said, but stay hidden. He strolled towards the door, trying to act casual. He kept one hand in his pocket, holding his wand. He knocked at the door. From inside came noises of scrambling. Harry waited for several minutes, resisting the urge to knock again. Finally, the door opened and Teddy stood nervously, staring at him. Harry, what a nice surprise. Was going to drop in soon. Sorry I missed a few dinners. Just been busy, you know. I get it, Teddy. No problem, Harry replied. Listen, do you mind if I come in? Got something a bit personal to talk to you about. Well, I'm a bit busy right now, Harry. It's very important, Harry added. Teddy nodded. Right, of course. Come in. He left the door open and walked down the hallway, leaving Harry to follow. Once Teddy's back was turned, he waved his wand to perform the exposure spell. Teddy was himself. That would make it even worse. They passed into the living room. Teddy reached his hand into his pocket, then froze. He then reached into his other pocket and pulled out his own wand. Harry had taken Teddy to Ollivanders himself to buy it, and recognised it immediately. But what was in his other pocket? Teddy flicked his wrist and glasses clinked in the kitchen, filling themselves with water and soaring through the air to place themselves on the coffee table. Thank you, said Harry, picking up a glass and taking a sip. What have you been up to lately, Teddy? Ginny and I have been worried. You know how it is, Harry. Job, girlfriend. Victoria said she hasn't seen you in weeks. Said you've gone quiet on her. Teddy began mumbling a response. We're just going through a rough patch. We. Harry leaned forward and placed his hand gently on Teddy's shoulder. Edward, you know you're as good as a son to us. Let us help you. Teddy's carefully crafted expression broke. His eyes welled up. You can't help. No one can. I can fix it. He trailed off. Harry gripped Teddy's shoulder tighter. You can't control it, son. No one can control the trouble it brings. Where is it? Teddy put his head into his hands and began sobbing. Harry didn't see until too late that he had been slowly reaching down towards the other pocket. Before he could react, Teddy had whipped out the Elder Wand and blasted Harry backwards. Harry hit the wall hard, feeling an immense wave of dizziness. He shook it off and pulled out his own wand, but kept it low. Standing up, he took a step towards Teddy. Teddy, you're not thinking straight. Just put the wand down and we can talk about this. He took another step forward and Teddy took one back. No, Teddy yelled, pointing the wand at Harry. I can do this. I'm so close to figuring it out. I can bring them back. Harry's shoulders slumped. His fear had been right. Son, you know that I felt exactly how you feel. If I could bring my parents back, I would, of course. But no spell can reawaken the dead. Harry shuddered, a memory flashing into his mind. Dumbledore had said the very same words to him once. Teddy was shaking, letting the tears drop from his face. You don't know that, because you're too scared to try. This wand, the things it can do, it... Edward Lupin, Harry said, gritting his teeth. Put the wand down, now. You are dishonouring your parents' memory. What about the 2 Aurors you killed? Their families will suffer, just like you did. I didn't kill them, Teddy screamed. It was them. They weren't supposed to kill. I told them, no killing, but they didn't listen. Harry strode forward and grabbed Teddy's outstretched wrist. Who helped you? Who killed the Auras? Teddy glanced from Harry's face to the Elder Wand. I'm sorry, Harry. He flicked his wrist. Harry had raised his own wand at the same time to perform an anti-apparition jinx. It bounced off Teddy's chest and hit Harry, who was stunned by the jelly-like sensation spreading through his body. He released his attacker's wrist, and Teddy disapparated. Chapter 4. He must have been at it for months, said Harry, looking around the table. After Teddy's escape, the Order had retired to Ron and Hermione's house. He's a metamorphagus, like his mum. He's been turning into us, collecting tiny bits of information where he could, never arousing suspicion. That's why the Veritaserum didn't reveal anything. We didn't know we were talking to him. He's been planning this for a long time. He was desperate, said Hermione, but involving Death Eaters. Where are they now? Asked Ron. We've already caught them, Hermione replied. Goyle, Travers, McNair. Apparently, 15 years in Azkaban wasn't enough to straighten them out. Murdering 2 Auras and conspiring to steal a Deathly Hallow from the Ministry. Maybe bars and a cell aren't enough for them anymore. We'll deal with them, said Harry. They're not our concern. He paused. I've brought every available Aura into the case. They're out looking for Teddy now. Ginny opened her mouth to speak, and Harry held up a hand. They're instructed to capture, with minimum necessary force. That's all well and good, mate, said Ron. But he attacked you. He's not in his right mind. He won't come quietly. And with the Elder Wand... Harry shook his head. I know. We can't match him. Oswald, one of the Auras who was killed, was the master of the Elder Wand. Teddy must have disarmed him, so now its ownership has passed to Teddy. He has access to all the power it offers. He sighed. We need to reason with him. If I can just get him to listen, I can get through to him. Ron drummed his fingers on the tabletop. Guys, have we thought that maybe... Don't say it, Harry cut in. Why not? Ron asked. Maybe he's right. Maybe the wand has the power. Maybe it's something Dumbledore never tried, and together we can figure it out. We could bring them all back. Remus, Tonks, Fred. The room fell silent. Molly's mouth fell open, and she looked at Arthur. Her husband clasped her hand and shook his head. Trust me, Ron, said Harry. If Dumbledore could have found a way, he would have. The closest we'll ever get to resurrection, we already have. The stone is as bad as the wand. End of discussion. He stared at Ron for several seconds. Eventually, Ron nodded. So, what now? Fleur said. We wait? We wait, Harry replied. And we think. If Teddy is being led by his emotions... God, why didn't I think of it sooner? The graves! The idea spread to the others' minds. But he's had the wand for over a week, said Molly. He's probably already been there. Harry stood up. We have to check. I'll go now. Wait for me here and try to think of a plan. I'll be back soon. He turned to leave, but Ginny grabbed his arm. But what if he's there? She asked. Ron stood. I'll go with you. Ginny stared at Harry, then released him. The 2 friends left the room. Talking immediately broke out behind them. Harry and Ron walked through the gate at the end of the garden, closing it behind them. With a stiff nod, they disapparated. All who had died in the Battle of Hogwarts had been buried inside its grounds, their graves surrounding Dumbledore's. Voldemort had destroyed the original marble tablet which marked his grave. It had been replaced, and was now covered with tributes etched into the stone by multiple wands. Harry and Ron approached the graveyard. It was early evening, and every grave was covered with bright flowers, their petals reflecting the light of the sunset. It was not creepy at all. It was peaceful, a fitting tribute to those they had lost. Harry crouched down in front of Remus and Tonks' joint resting place. The earth looked undisturbed, but that was an easy spell to perform. The headstone read, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, brave souls who gave their lives in the service of the good. Their sacrifice will be remembered. They live on through their son. Ron, said Harry, you go up to the castle and update the headmistress. Tell her I'll be there shortly, I want to talk to Dumbledore." "Right," Ron said, turning away and taking long strides up the hill towards Hogwarts. Harry pulled out his wand. He paused. Either way, he didn't like the thought of what he would find, or not find, in the grave. He had no desire to see the decaying bodies of his friends, but he would prefer that to the alternative, that their son had taken their bodies in an effort to resurrect them. He took a deep breath and waved his wand towards the earth in front of their gravestone. The soil shook, rose in one huge block, and lowered down onto the ground alongside. The couple's coffins were exposed. They showed no sign of forced entry, but again, this was an easy fix by magic. Harry jabbed his wand at each of them in turn, and the lids burst open. He sighed. The coffins were empty. Harry stood up and swept his wand over the area. He turned and walked towards the castle, not looking back as his magic reformed the grave into its pristine state. Harry felt sick as he walked through the Hogwarts corridors. He couldn't help picturing his two friends, yanked from their deaths and reanimated as shadows of their former selves. Harry had seen, had fought, Inferi. He hated the thought of Remus and Tonks enduring such a fate, with Teddy having no idea what he was doing and mistakenly zombifying his fallen parents. Harry looked up to find a phoenix statue looming over his head. He said. He had forgotten about the password. By the end of his time at Hogwarts, Harry had barely needed one to enter the headmaster's office as such a frequent visitor. But with McGonagall in charge, and Harry no longer a student, the statue had no reason to allow him entry. However, since Ron was not standing there with him, Harry assumed he had gotten into the office somehow. "Could you please tell the headmistress that Harry Potter, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement at the Ministry of Magic, is here to see her?" The statue gave no sign that it had heard, or registered in any way, Harry's words. He waited half a minute, then hesitantly knocked on the stone bird's beak. Still, nothing happened. Harry began pacing impatiently. After another half a minute, the statue sprung to life and stepped into an alcove on its right, revealing the door behind. "Thanks," Harry muttered as he pushed the door open. McGonagall sat behind her desk, listening intently to Ron as he talked. They looked towards the door as Harry entered, and Ron finished with, "And that's pretty much it." He turned to Harry. "What did you find?" "They're gone," Harry replied. McGonagall sighed. "Then it is as we feared. The boy has no idea what he is dealing with. We must find him, quickly. What's your plan, Potter?" Harry took a seat in front of the desk. He had not sat in that chair since he was a student himself. The great mahogany desk and the office itself were not so intimidating now. "Actually," he said, "I was wondering if you would let me speak with Professor Dumbledore for a minute." McGonagall raised her eyebrows. "You wish me to leave?" Harry cleared his throat. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude. It's your office, it's fine. Weasley, let's take a walk. Now is the perfect time to discuss your new product, which has been infesting my school. What is it called? Desk Morpher?" "Just Desk Morph," Ron replied. "It's harmless fun, Professor. You see, what it does..." Ron's voice cut off as the office door closed behind them. Harry turned to the portrait of Albus Dumbledore. "Do you often pretend to be asleep?" he asked the picture. "Only for the really intriguing conversations," Dumbledore replied, opening his twinkling eyes. "Then I am free to listen, without being asked for my opinion. Of course, at times, I am actually asleep. I did die an old man, if you remember, Harry." "I remember, Professor. How are you?" "Tired, my boy. I realize I am not the real Albus, but still, the mind boggles, sometimes, at the thought of what I am." Dumbledore stood up and paced up and down within his frame. "Am I a shadow? A window into the next life? I have tried to discover the answer, but it eludes me. In any case, we did not come to talk about me. Tell me, do you still have nightmares?" Harry waved his hand. "That isn't important right now. What's important is..." "Forgive me, Harry," said Dumbledore, "but it is of the most paramount importance. You see, Teddy and yourself have much in common. An insight into your mind may well be an insight into his." Harry grunted. "That's true." Dumbledore nodded. "And so, tell me, how does the Elder Wand feature in your dreams?" Harry stood up and stared outside the window beyond the desk. He saw a family of thestrals circling the forbidden forest. Sometimes I see him, pointing it at me, about to kill me. And how do you feel when you see that? I wonder what would have happened if I'd had the wand instead, if you'd have given it to me. Dumbledore leaned forwards, as if he was trying to burst out of the portrait. What would you have done if you had obtained the Elder Wand sooner, if you were unaware of the limits on its power, or its capacity to corrupt? Harry rubbed his face. Stubble was pushing through his skin. He had not shaved for a few days. I would have tried to save more people, and the people who were gone, I would have tried whatever I could to bring them back. And if you were unsuccessful? Dumbledore sounded urgent. I would have asked someone for help, you. And if I had refused to help, I would have looked elsewhere. Then you know where to look. But who? Dumbledore stayed silent. Harry walked up to the portrait and stared at Dumbledore for several seconds. The horrible truth dawned on him. Not. He wouldn't, surely. It is a well-known fact that Voldemort's greatest aim, perhaps his only real aim, was to conquer death. Who better to ask? If I remember correctly, even you felt a slight temptation when Voldemort made a false promise to you. Harry's head swam with the memory. Voldemort's soul protruding from the back of Professor Quirrell's head. Together, we can bring them back. Harry banged his fist on the desk to clear his mind. But it's impossible, isn't it? Dumbledore did not answer immediately. Harry turned to him, his eyes pleading. Yes, Dumbledore finally replied. It is impossible. But young Master Lupin does not know that. And he may cause untold catastrophe in his efforts. He must be stopped, Harry. Harry closed his eyes. He's just a boy. You were younger, Dumbledore replied. They sat in silence for several minutes. Suddenly, Harry leapt out of the chair. He's going after the Resurrection Stone. He's going to summon Voldemort to help him. I imagine that's true, Dumbledore said. And even beyond the grave, Voldemort's broken soul will likely exert a powerful influence over the boy. He would settle for ruling the world from within death, I think. Harry sped from the room. When the door slammed behind him, Dumbledore leaned back in his portrait chair and breathed deep. I thought death was supposed to be peaceful, he said to himself. Even now, Tom, it seems our battle is not over. Chapter 5. The Resurrection Stone was hidden within the deepest recesses of the Ministry of Magic building. It never stayed in one place for long, and its disguising box was regularly altered. Being one of the most powerful magical objects in existence, it was immune to most spells. It could not be summoned, charmed, or manipulated in any simple way. Voldemort had, of course, placed a powerful curse on it, but he had been an unusually powerful wizard. Very few people knew where the stone was at any one time, and that ensured that in 19 years no witch or wizard had come close to retrieving it, though many had tried. However, this time was different. Teddy had the Elder Wand, and as a metamorphagus, a rare natural ability, he was able to change appearance at will. The possibility that he could sneak into the Ministry unnoticed was very real. Harry and Hermione swept through the Ministry building, their statuses as Department Head and Minister for Magic ensuring that no one stopped them when they were clearly in a hurry. Along the way, Harry conjured a paper aeroplane, etched a note into it with his wand, and sent it flying off. The message was simple. Gather the auras and find me. HP. Harry had sent the note to his assistant, Barnabas Pruitt. He was a cousin of the Weasleys, and not the brightest, but his determination to prove himself useful made him an asset in times like these. Harry trusted him completely. As Harry and Hermione entered an elevator, Barnabas and two auras stepped in after him. Barnabas was gasping for breath. Mr. Potter, he wheezed. Minister, what's... Not here, Barnabas, said Harry. He nodded stiffly to the auras. They had guessed what this was about. Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Hermione said. The elevator, after a second's pause, whizzed sideways, backwards, and finally, down. Department of Magical Law Enforcement, said the smooth female voice of the elevator. "Please step out for Aura Office, Improper Use of Magic Office, and Wizengamot." The voice raised itself to shout after them as they sprang from the elevator in a group. The collective sprinted down the corridor towards the courtrooms, Harry and Hermione in the lead. On the way, more auras appeared from various doors and joined the group, until there were more than a dozen of them. They burst through the entrance to courtroom 9. Harry had not entered this room since the last Death Eater trials, years ago, but he knew exactly where the stone was hidden. "Spread out," he yelled. "Form a perimeter." The auras did as commanded, taking various places among the rows of seats. Hermione sidled up to Harry and muttered to him, "What's our play? We're just going to stand here and wait for him?" "This is where he's coming. I know it," Harry replied. "If we wait here, he'll come to us, and we'll have him trapped." Hermione nodded, but added, "We can't stay here forever, Harry. These people have other jobs to do." "We'll put them on shifts, have this room guarded, 24/7. "Like we always should have," Hermione said. "I told you, guarding it would attract attention to it," Harry replied. "No one would know to look here unless we gave them the direction." One by one, he met the eyes of the auras in the room, Barnabas, and finally Hermione. He was about to reveal the exact location of the resurrection stone. The trap was set. "Eyes up," he whispered to Hermione, as he lifted the top of the lectern which overlooked the room. Inside the hollowed-out centre was a plain black box. He placed the box on top of the lectern and tapped it with his wand. The box evaporated, leaving behind a bright pink muggle piggy bank, which was, literally, a china pig. Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a small hammer. The piggy bank was protected by a clever charm, which meant that no magic could affect it. This would not deter a would-be thief for long, but the time they wasted trying to blast the object open would mean more time for the auras to catch up with them. Harry positioned the pig on the lectern and lined the hammer up exactly with its nose. Another charm meant that the item could only be broken by hitting it in exactly the right place. Anywhere else and the force would rebound on the attempting breaker. Harry raised the hammer and had one last look around the room. The auras were watching the door closely. There was only one way in or out, and they were primed for an attack. Hermione was searching their faces for any suspicious signs. Only one stared at the piggy bank. Barnabas had a hungry look in his eyes. He was fixed on the piggy bank as if it were the most precious thing in the world. "Got him," Harry muttered to Hermione. She did not react, but reached for her wand, moving so slowly it was almost imperceptible. Harry brought the hammer down, stopping only centimetres short of the pig. In the same instant, he raised his wand and brought it downward in an arc, aiming for Barnabas. He flew back several metres and landed hard, sliding across the stone floor. Hermione swished her wand towards him, emitting a purple light, an anti-apparition jinx. Harry nodded to Hermione. He leapt off the bench and strode towards Barnabas, who was clearly Teddy in disguise. "Keep watch on the door," Harry said to the auras. "He may not be alone. Norman, Samuel, see if you can find the real Barnabas. If he's hurt, take him to St. Mungo's." The two auras rushed off. Their trap had worked. Harry had guessed Teddy might try to sneak into the ministry in disguise, so he had made it easy for him. He knelt down next to the unconscious figure of Barnabas and paused. Hermione joined him. "What is it, Harry?" she said, noticing his confusion. "Why hasn't he changed?" Harry asked. "I thought when Metamorphogai were knocked unconscious, they—" He stopped, noticing movement out the corner of his eye. One of the auras, Tompkins, had pulled out his wand and was striding a little too quickly towards them. He slashed his wand in their direction, and Harry was suddenly pinned to the floor. Harry had never seen such a spell. He could not move a muscle, but it was not the body-bind spell. Rather, it was as if a giant was stepping on his back, the force crushing him downwards. He struggled to breathe. Out the corner of his eye he saw Hermione experiencing the same. From the grunts and withered groans, he assumed everyone in the room was under the effects of the hex. "Don't follow me, Harry," said a voice. It was Teddy. "I don't want to hurt anyone. Just let me do this." Ted, Harry tried to say. He could not see Teddy, but he heard the piggy bank smash. A second later, Teddy cried out, and Harry was freed from the effects of the crushing bind. He sucked in a lungful of air and pushed himself to his feet. Still gasping, he turned to survey the situation. Norman and Samuel had re-entered the courtroom and had their wands pointed at Teddy. He was lying on the ground. He had been distracted by the sight of the resurrection stone, which was clasped in his hand when the auras returned. He had been disarmed, the elder wand lying several feet from him. As one, everyone in the room rushed towards him. Before they could reach him, however, he had pulled another wand from his pocket and muttered, "Accio." The elder wand shot towards him. He grabbed it out of the air, pocketed the stone, then stood facing the group with a wand in each hand. Several of the auras threw anti-apparition jinxes at him. He swept the two wands around his head, and the jinxes passed harmlessly to the side. The auras did not give up, continuing to cast spells at him so he would not have time to disapparate. "Teddy," Harry yelled over the cracks and claps of sound. "Listen to me. You've got to stop this. Your parents wouldn't want—" Harry's breath was knocked out of him as Teddy's spell hit him in the chest. He dropped to a knee. Hermione stepped forward, blocking a curse aimed at her with a hasty shield charm. "Your parents would be ashamed," she cried at Teddy, continuing to move towards him as she deflected his attacks. "We knew them, Teddy. This is not block what they dodge would want." She span her wrist around with the last word, and Teddy's regular wand was knocked from his grip. It flew through the air, landing in Hermione's free hand. Teddy expressed surprise for a moment, then pointed the elder wand at the ceiling. Cracks appeared in the stone, and within seconds, large pieces of rock began raining down onto them. Harry, Hermione, and the auras held their wands over their heads, shielding themselves from the debris. "We don't know what they would want," Teddy yelled over the noise. He stepped forward, turned, and vanished. "Barnabas was under the Imperious curse," said Harry, shaking his head. "We should have checked everyone. We were careless." "It was a good plan," said Ginny, who had joined them at the ministry. "Not good enough," Harry replied. "We know what the problem is, why he keeps evading us." Harry avoided his wife's eyes. They were sitting in his office, Hermione, Ginny, and Ron in front of the desk, Harry behind it. "What?" said Ginny, leaning forward in her chair. Harry planted his fingertips on the oak surface. "We're still playing by the rules. We're treating Teddy as a lost friend. And he is. But we won't catch him unless we start behaving like we're after a criminal, someone capable of terrible things." He locked eyes with his wife. He knew she didn't like what he was saying, but she knew he was right. Finally, she nodded. Harry continued. "I'll make the announcement. Teddy Lupin is a fugitive and must be caught. By any means necessary." Ron coughed. "Harry, I don't think—" "He could have killed a lot of people today, Ron," Harry interrupted. "Teddy is family, but it's clear now he won't listen to reason. I don't need to remind you of what might happen if Voldemort starts working through him." Ron slammed his hand on the desk. "I know, Harry, but didn't you say once how important it is to not become like your enemy? We're not becoming like anything. We're doing what we have to protect the people." Ron snarled. "So, what, for the greater good? Is that it, Grindelwald?" It was Harry's turn to slam the desk. He stood up, kicking his chair back. "This is why you couldn't cut it as an aura. The joke shop has made you soft, Ron. We'll do what we have to." Harry glanced at his wife. Her glossy red hair, her shining eyes, both reflected the light of the sunset coming in from the window. He softened and took a deep breath. "I'm sorry I said that, Ron. You're right, of course you are. But the peace we all worked so hard for, it's worth a life. Even Teddy's." Ron shuffled his chair back, stood up, and put on his jacket. "I'm not taking part in this anymore. I don't like how you sound right now, Harry." He turned to Hermione. "I'll see you at home." Without another word, he left the office. Hermione sighed. "I'll talk to him." "No," said Harry, taking a seat again. "It's fine. He's forgotten, and I don't blame him. We'd all like to forget." He lowered his head. Ginny leaned over the desk and grabbed his hand, squeezing it. Harry squeezed back and continued. But what Ron needs to accept is, the world didn't magically get better when he stopped being an Auror. The fight goes on. He sat back wearily. It always goes on. Hermione clenched her teeth. Careful, Harry. You know he doesn't think that. He's suffered as much as the rest of us. Ginny cleared her throat. What are we going to tell people happened here? Hermione and Harry stared at each other. As minister, Hermione had the authority. She spoke first. We don't have to mention the Elder Wand. We don't want to create a panic, but we will tell people the truth. The Ministry was attacked by someone on the run, and they are at large. Harry nodded. Ginny faced Harry. And what will you do? Harry raised himself up and walked to the window, staring out over London. I have my own Hallow card to play. Big Ben chimed, lifting Harry from his thoughts. Sorry to kick you out, but I have a meeting with the Aurors now. I'll see you both later. Hermione and Ginny quietly left the room while Harry continued to stare out the window. When they were gone, he walked over to his desk and picked up a framed photograph. It was taken during Harry's 5th year at Hogwarts, when the Order had gathered at their headquarters in Grimmauld Place for Christmas. He focused first on Sirius, who had his hands on the pictured Harry's shoulders and was beaming. Harry looked at his younger self. Despite all the anguish of those times, he had found a way to enjoy the moment, to be happy. He scanned each face in the picture and lastly turned to Remus and Tonks. They had not yet established themselves as a couple at this point, but staring at them in the photo, Harry didn't know how he could have missed their connection. Their hands were gently brushing against each other, and every few seconds they turned inwards and their eyes met. I'm sorry, said Harry. I have no choice. You would understand, right? But Harry's chest ached briefly in response to his own question. He knew they wouldn't. Chapter 6. Hogwarts was no longer the safest place in the world in Harry's mind. It was his own home. Over the years, as he and Ginny had more children, he had taken pains to make the house more secure. Every protection charm in existence was laid upon the building and its surrounding grounds, so no one could enter who was not known to them. Ginny thought Harry paranoid, but he had plenty of old enemies, and he had made plenty of new ones in his years as an Auror. He was taking no chances. Harry had, of course, removed all magical privileges that Teddy had once possessed, so he was no longer able to enter the Potter Weasley household. However, with the Elder Wand, unknown powers were available to him, and so Harry had a team from the Magical Law Enforcement Squad rechecking every spell that had been placed and adding new ones. At the same time, Harry was in his bedroom, dragging his old Hogwarts trunk from the bottom of a wardrobe. Harry had kept the trunk for one reason only, and it wasn't for its sentimental value. The bulky, dented object was a nuisance in a tidy home, but it was the perfect hiding place for the most valuable and arguably dangerous item that Harry possessed, his invisibility cloak. During the last Wizard War, the cloak had been revealed to be no ordinary magical object. It was one of the 3 Deathly Hallows, meaning its powers of granting the wearer invisibility would never diminish with age. Harry had not touched it for years, but when he tapped his wand on the trunk's lock and pulled the cloak free, it shimmered just as it had done when he'd first acquired it at age 11. He ran his hands over the light material, remembering the numerous occasions when he had roamed Hogwarts Castle long after dark, the cloak shielding him from view. It was not lost on Harry that Teddy would also be seeking the cloak. He had grown up with the same stories as every child from a wizarding family. Possessing all 3 Hallows made one the master of death. When Teddy inevitably couldn't accomplish what he sought to with the 2 Hallows he currently held, he would aim to complete the set. Bringing the cloak to him made it that much easier for him to take it. However, it was also their best weapon against him. Harry folded the cloak, stuffed it into a backpack, and made his way downstairs. Ginny was sat in the garden, reading, as Lily rode around on a toy broomstick. The toy was limited to hover only a few feet from the ground and turn slowly, but already their daughter showed remarkable flying skills. She'll make a great seeker, said Harry, as he walked up to Ginny and placed his hand on her shoulder. Or a chaser, like her mum, Ginny replied, leaning her cheek on his hand. Harry crouched down next to her. I have to go. Ginny didn't move. Your whole department is looking for him. Hermione has her office involved. You don't need to. You know they're just a distraction, Harry cut in. He'll see them coming. He's always been clever, but now he's driven by desperation too. They'll lead the chase, and he'll keep his eyes on them. But what if he's already spoken to Voldemort? Ginny asked. He probably has, Harry replied. And I'm not enough to bring him back. I'm going to ask for help. Ginny turned to face him. She's only 18. Harry stroked his wife's face. You were younger when you fought him. Ginny sighed. I thought we were no more Mr. Nice Guy. I thought we were treating him like a dangerous criminal. Harry shrugged. Ron was right. I'm giving it one more shot. This is our best play, our last play, to try and save him. Or we'll have no choice but to do what is necessary. Ginny stood up. I'm coming too. Lily can stay with my parents. Maybe with both of us there. Ginny, don't start, Harry. They need one of us around, Harry said. Ginny froze, and they glanced up at Lily. He continued. If I don't make it back, they need one of us around. Ginny took his face in her hands, as she always did when life's pressures felt overwhelming to him. You fought enough, she said. Let someone else fight this time. Harry kissed her, then took her hands away. The peace is worth a life, he said. He walked over to where Lily was floating. Hey, Lil, said Harry. Could you come here for a second? Lily drifted the broomstick until she sat in front of him, pulled up on the handle to brake, and leapt off. She jumped up and down excitedly. Did you see me, Daddy? Did you see me? She cried. Harry laughed and knelt down, taking her tiny hands in his. Yes, you looked amazing. You'll make the school team, no problem. Lily's face lit up with the praise. Harry continued. Listen, Lil, I have to go away for a while. You look after your mum while I'm gone, okay? Lily's happy expression crumbled. For how long? Only a little while, a few days, he replied. Keep practicing your flying, and we'll go for a ride on my firebolt when I'm back. How does that sound? Lily beamed. Yes, Daddy, let's do that. She leapt into his arms. Harry cleared his throat, holding back the tears. I love you, Lil. I love you too, Daddy. She squeezed his neck, then released him. Harry stood up and turned towards the side passage leading to the front of the house. He looked behind him and saw his wife and daughter, hand in hand, watching him. He gave one last wave and walked through the passageway. Once out of his front garden, he turned on the spot and disapparated. Shell Cottage remained the humble yet cosy house it had been when Bill and Fleur had first built it, although additional rooms had been added to the tops and sides to accommodate their larger family. It resembled, to Harry, a sharper version of the Burrow. The interior reflected a clash between the influence of Bill's adventurous career and Fleur's French roots, with dark, earthy colours and delicate pillows and throw blankets. Harry had barely sat down in the couple's living room when Fleur said, bluntly, She's not coming with you. Harry looked from Fleur to Bill. He cleared his throat. With respect, Fleur, she's of age, and I don't care, Fleur interrupted. This is not her fight. My children will not be involved in a war. Harry grimaced. Would you have done it for Bill? I did do it for Bill, Fleur yelled, pounding the side of the sofa with a fist. And I did it for you and for many others. Her mouth tightened. Her expression was thunderous. Find someone else to help you. Bill held up his hand. Now, darling, let's everyone just take a breath. He paused, pulled out his wand, and following its wave, a tea set floated from a nearby dresser, landing on the coffee table. The three of them watched the tea prepare itself for a few seconds, and Bill continued. My love, Harry is right. Victoria is of age. She's allowed to make her own choices now. Not under my roof, said Fleur. Harry picked up his tea. He did not drink it. He just held the cup in his hands. With respect, Fleur, that will only drive her away. At some point, she's going to start looking for Teddy herself. Wouldn't it be better if we looked together? Fleur stared at Harry, her eyes narrowed. Bill intervened. "Let's hear what Victoria has to say," he said. He stood up and walked to the staircase. "Victoria, dear, could you come down, please?" Seconds later, Harry heard a door opening and heavy footsteps making their way downstairs. When he saw her, Harry's heart seared with a slight pain. Victoria looked terrible, not at all like her beautiful part Vila self. She appeared exhausted. Her hair was unkempt, she wore scruffy muggle clothing, and her eyes were clearly red from excessive crying. "What is it, Papa?" said Victoria. Harry!" She rushed over to Harry and took his hands. "Do you have news of Teddy? Is he okay? Please tell me everything." "Victoria," Harry said, sighing. "You look like you haven't been sleeping." He led her over to the sofa and sat her down between her parents. "That doesn't matter," she said, her slight French accent becoming more apparent as her distress rose. "Please tell me if Teddy is okay." Harry took a deep breath. "Victoria, Teddy is in trouble." She gasped, and before Harry could continue, she began blurting out questions. "What happened? Where is he? I want to see him. Can I see him?" Bill took her hand. "Let Harry speak, dear." Victoria nodded vigorously. Harry leaned forward. "He has stolen both the Elder Wand and the Resurrection Stone. He is using them to try and bring back his parents. I have tried, twice, to reason with him, but he wouldn't listen to me." Victoria's body sagged. Tears began making their way down her cheeks. Harry wondered if her face was even dry from the last time she had cried. "He was always talking about trying to find a way," she said. "I didn't think he was serious. He was fascinated with the Hallows, but I thought it was just because of you." "I see," said Harry. "Well, he has hurt people, and he may hurt many more. He doesn't realise the risk of using such powerful magical objects, of how corrupting they can be. He doesn't know where the obsession with bringing his parents back can take him." "But you do," Victoria responded. "Yes," Harry said, "I do, and that's why I need your help. If he won't listen to me, the person who understands more than most how he's feeling, the only other person he might listen to is you. Maybe when he sees you, he will stay still for a minute. And that's all the time we need." "All the time you need to what?" Victoria asked, her eyes narrowing. "To make sure he doesn't hurt anyone else, including himself." "But what if he doesn't listen to me? What will you do then?" "We're hoping it doesn't come to that. Victoria, Teddy has become very dangerous. Desperation to the point of not caring who you hurt. Well, you're too young to remember those times." "I've heard stories," Victoria said. "I will help you. When do we leave?" "Hold on," said Fleur. She turned to her daughter. "We will discuss this after Harry leaves. You're not going anywhere right now." "Mama," said Victoria, "I love you, but there's nothing you can do to stop me." Fleur opened her mouth to respond, and Victoria went on. "Didn't Grandpa always say, love is the thing most worth fighting for?" "That," Fleur began, then she closed her mouth. Victoria grabbed her mother's hands. "I love him, Mama." Harry watched Fleur closely. She was clearly undergoing a deep internal struggle. She could find a way to stop her daughter leaving the house, but she couldn't keep her locked up forever. After a whole minute, she faced Harry. "Promise me you will protect my daughter." "With my life," he replied. Victoria jumped and kissed her mother on the cheek. "Merci, Mama, merci," she cried. Then to Harry, "Do you know where he is?" "I was hoping you might have an idea," Harry said. Victoria grew silent. She closed her eyes and after a few seconds said, "There are a few places we could try." "Good," said Harry. "We leave in 15 minutes. Pack yourself a bag." "This is one place we would go when we were still at Hogwarts," said Victoria, after Harry had side-apparated with her to their 5th destination. The previous locations showed no sign that Teddy had been there. They were mainly romantic spots atop hills, situated near each of the young couple's houses. This next place was a small forest on the far side of Hogsmeade. Harry threw the invisibility cloak over them both, then Victoria led them to a glade, sheltered on all sides by tall, thin spruce trees. The glade was empty. "It wasn't the most private place," Victoria said, as Harry pulled the cloak off them, "but it was ours." Well, he's definitely been here recently, Harry said, crouching down. The grass is flattened in a square. He pitched a tent here. But he's not here now, said Victoria, visibly disappointed. I'd be surprised if he stayed here long. It's too exposed, too close to the village. Did you go anywhere else more secluded? Well, yes, she said hesitantly. There was a place in the Forbidden Forest that... The Forbidden Forest? What were you thinking? We were safe, Victoria added. Teddy always said the creatures would leave us alone because they could smell the wolf in him. Harry didn't remember Remus ever mentioning that, but it made sense. Very well. Take us there. Victoria nodded and held out her arm. In an instant, they were standing outside of the Hogwarts gates. Let's go straight to the forest, said Harry. I'll send a message to the headmistress. He pulled out his wand, thought of his wife and 3 children, and cried, Expecto Patronum! Harry's stag Patronus burst forth from the tip of his wand, ran a few steps forward, then turned to face him. We're here on the business we discussed, said Harry, speaking to the stag. Please do not assist. The silvery stag bowed its head, then galloped away, shooting upwards when it reached the castle walls. They followed its path toward the headmistress's office, then it disappeared through a window. Let's go, Harry said. It was easy to forget, Harry thought, how big the castle grounds were after you left Hogwarts. The wonderful memories didn't seem to include the time it took to walk from one classroom or part of the castle to another. Walking to Hagrid's hut and the nearby Forbidden Forest was an even longer investment. Finally, they reached the forest's edge. It's a bit of a hike from here, said Victoria. Lovely, Harry replied. Let me know when we're close and we'll put the cloak on. Until then, wand out and stay alert. The pair had been walking for half an hour when Harry said, You came all this way to get privacy? Well, I'm sure you remember, Harry, said Victoria, her face turning red, how difficult it is to find a place to be intimate in the castle. Said Harry, trying his best to sound disapproving. In his head, he absolutely remembered. He glanced at the trees they passed. They had no distinguishing features. I hope you remember the way back. Yes, of course, Victoria replied, pointing to a tree next to her. When he focused, he could see a heart carved into the bark, with the initials T+V inside it, and an arrow pointing deeper into the forest. When you tap it, she said, it shows you where the next one is. She demonstrated, placing a finger on the arrow. It glowed red, and in his peripheral vision, Harry could see another red glow several trees away. Clever, said Harry. Okay, we're almost there, Victoria muttered, lowering her voice. Harry nodded and threw the cloak over them. Their footsteps slowed as they crept around the tree roots and forest debris, wincing every time a leaf crackled or a twig snapped. Something in the air made Harry feel that danger was close. Was something in the forest watching them, or was Teddy attempting to perform forbidden magic nearby? With every step forward, his body grew more tense. They reached a spot where the roots of 2 giant trees had intertwined, forming a sort of bench between them. The bench was full of holes from spell blasts, and pierced with over a dozen arrows. Chapter 7. Centaurs, Victoria cried. Harry, do you think they've taken him? She made as if to rush from under the cloak, but Harry grabbed her waist and pulled her back. Seconds later, the thunder of galloping hooves sounded all around them. The 2 trees were quickly surrounded by centaurs. Harry pulled Victoria to lean against a trunk and held a hand to her mouth. One centaur rode to the front of the herd. The human part of him was pale. He had cream skin, blonde hair, and piercing blue eyes. The horse part was smoky black. He reared up, his massive hooves barely missing them. We told you never to come here again, dark boy wizard. Reveal yourself, we know you are here. Harry turned to Victoria and put his finger to his lips. He then stepped away and lifted the cloak from himself, leaving only her covered. The centaurs nearest to him neighed, and 24 bows were instantly bent towards him. I come in peace, said Harry. I am Harry Potter. I'm looking for someone. The centaurs turned to each other and began muttering. Several looked towards the sky. The pale centaur stepped forward and leaned down until his face was level with Harry's. Harry did not take a step back. After a few seconds, the centaur straightened up. "It is Harry Potter," he declared. The bowstrings were relaxed, and the centaur's expressions turned from anger to curiosity. "You are a friend of our kind," said the pale centaur. "I fought alongside you in the battle against the Dark Lord. I was a foal then, but I remember that you fought bravely." He held out his hand, and Harry took it. "As did you, Uzziah. I almost didn't recognize you." "It has been a long time," Uzziah replied. "What brings you to our forest? Do you know the boy who has been tampering with dark magic?" "I do," said Harry. "He is very important to my friend." He gestured to Victoria, and she slowly pulled off the cloak. "And I?" Uzziah glanced in her direction. "We have seen her and the boy come here sometimes. We do not trouble students from the castle, since our alliance at the battle against the Dark Lord. But recently, the boy has been bringing evil spirits with him. We chased him away. We cannot allow such things in our forest, Harry Potter." "I understand. It's not his fault. He's suffering from the grief of loss." Uzziah sighed. "A grief we must all learn to live with. What will you do with him?" "We are going to try and save him. We must find him before it is too late. Do you have any idea where he went?" "We followed him to the eastern border, then left him there. Harry Potter, you must be careful. He is carrying Albus Dumbledore's wand, the one spoken of in prophecy." "I know," said Harry. "Thank you, Uzziah." Uzziah bowed gently, then raised his head. His eyes glazed over. "The evening star is rising early." The rest of the centaurs looked to the sky. "Yes, well, we'll be going then," said Harry. "Have a good night." "The balance of light and dark has been disrupted," Uzziah muttered. "A sinful presence re-emerges." Victoria stared at the fading sun, barely visible beneath the tree canopy. "You can tell that from the sky?" "Let's be going, Victoria," Harry said, patting her shoulder. They walked away from the tree bench, the centaurs parting to make room for them. The pair walked in silence for some time, following the magic arrows carved onto the trees. When the edge of the forest came into view, Victoria spoke. "I can't think of anywhere else, Harry. There's nowhere else we went." Her voice broke on the last word. Harry stared at the castle as it came into view. It was now dark enough that the upper towers could no longer be seen. Gryffindor Tower, the one he always searched for first, was shrouded by the night. "It's late," said Harry. "Let's get some rest and start again in the morning. We won't find anything in this light, anyway." She nodded sadly, and they headed towards Hogwarts. They would spend the night there, he decided, to avoid having to repeat the same battle with Fleur the next morning. If it was him, Harry thought, he would hide somewhere within or near the castle. There was nowhere he knew better in the world, even now, and there were plenty of places to remain unseen. Of course, the obvious choice for Teddy would be... "Surely not," said Harry, stopping in his tracks. "It's just too obvious. It's the first place you would think to look. Or it should be. Brilliant, in a way." "What, Harry?" said Victoria, standing in front of him. "What are you thinking?" Harry did not answer. He turned around, facing Hogsmeade. Silhouetting the horizon, one tree stood out above all. A tree that had doubled in size since Harry's time at Hogwarts, and even then it had been gigantic. The Whomping Willow. "You think he's hiding in the Shrieking Shack?" Victoria asked, as they rushed down the hill. "Isn't that just too easy? He'd know we would look there." "Would we?" Harry responded. "We've just spent the whole day apparating around the country, and it never occurred to either of us until now, and only because I happened to stumble on the idea. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just makes sense, doesn't it?" Victoria shrugged. "Well, I hope you're right, Harry. Has he taken you there before?" "Once, when we first met. I think he was trying to impress me." After 10 minutes, they reached the Whomping Willow. Harry no longer needed Cat to help him past the deadly branches of the attacking tree. He pointed his wand at the trunk, muttered "Immobulus," and every swaying branch froze. Harry headed towards the base of the tree, gesturing for Victoria to follow. Once at the roots, they squeezed into the hole and crawled through the tunnel. "Keep your head down," Harry whispered, as he bumped his own head. He hadn't used this tunnel since he was 13 years old. It was much more difficult to navigate now. After several minutes, the tunnel began to curve upwards, and light was visible ahead. A voice, no, several voices, were audible. Harry locked eyes with Victoria and placed a finger to his lips. He covered them with the cloak, and together they edged towards the wooden door, on the other side of which was the shrieking shack. One of the voices was definitely Teddy's. Victoria stared desperately at Harry. He shook his head and gestured patience. He leaned gently against the door. It creaked. He backed away. They were beyond the Hogwarts grounds now. If they entered the building and Teddy heard them, he would know he had been discovered and disapparate. The two of them turned their ears towards the door. "I got the bones of their parents, just like you said," Teddy's voice. "Very good," said another voice. An icy chill ran down Harry's spine. He never thought he would hear that voice again. "Now, the flesh," said a third voice, similar to the second. Harry was confused. Who else had Teddy summoned from the land of the dead? "Where am I going to get flesh of a servant? I don't have a servant." "Foolish boy, think of those who love you. Do they not serve you?" said yet another voice. All right. And blood of an enemy? "You must use my blood. It is the only blood strong enough to complete the spell." "But you're dead. Where am I getting your blood? Your body was burned when you died." "Some blood remains. I will tell you where to find it." "Stop!" Victoria yelled, and before Harry could stop her, she had pushed away the cloak and burst through the door. It bounced against the wall and began to close again. Harry ran in behind her before the door slammed shut, keeping himself concealed. Teddy pointed the elder wand at the intruder. When he saw it was Victoria, he lowered it, shame and fear clear on his face. "Victoria, what? How did you—" "You must stop this, Teddy," she screamed. Harry was not looking at them. He was staring beyond Teddy, at a truly horrifying sight. Floating in the air, in a circle around Teddy, were 8 ghostly figures of different shapes and sizes. They were all malformed, twisted and broken. The 8 pieces of Voldemort's soul. Harry's mouth dropped open. He drew his wand, but who, or what, to point it at? One of the Voldemort soul pieces sneered. "This is the girl you mentioned? Perfect. She can provide the servant's flesh. Come closer, girl, and hold out your arm." When Victoria recoiled from the voice, he added, "You want to help Teddy, don't you?" Victoria ran to Teddy and grabbed his shoulders, turning him to face her. "What are you doing, my love? He's the one who killed them." Harry moved across the room to see Teddy's face. He was clutching the resurrection stone in one hand and had a manic look. It was then that Harry noticed 2 complete skeletons laying on the bed, along with the partial skeletons of 2 others at their feet. They were Remus and Tonks, and what must have been the remains of their fathers. "No," said Teddy. "It wasn't him. It was the Death Eaters. He would have spared them. He's going to help me bring them back." "They can't be brought back, Teddy. They're gone. He's lying. He's using you." The 8 Voldemorts laughed as one. "The girl doesn't know what she is talking about. Foolish child. You have to trust me, Teddy. Together, we can bring them back." "Shut up! Shut up!" Victoria yelled. She placed her hands on Teddy's face. "Come back to me, my love. We can get through this." Several of the Voldemorts growled. "The girl is getting in our way. We need only her flesh, dead or alive. Kill her." Teddy gasped. "I can't kill her. She's my—" "Do as I say. Do not be weak." Teddy froze. He stared into Victoria's wide eyes. After a pause, he said, "No." A hissing sound echoed across the room. "Do not say no to Lord Voldemort," said the 8 soul parts collectively. They started to grow until they towered above them all, filling the room. "You are weak, like your parents were weak. If you want to return them to life, you will obey me." Teddy and Victory shrunk beneath the gaze of the giant ghosts, but Teddy stood defiantly and said again, "No, I won't do it. I won't hurt her." The Voldemorts screamed. Teddy and Victory covered their ears and fell to the floor. Harry used the distraction. He pointed his wand at Teddy and performed the anti-apparition spell. Teddy's body grew momentarily stiff. Harry had to act fast. The spell would not last for long. He ran at Teddy and, with an outstretched hand, knocked the resurrection stone from his grip. The 8 Voldemorts vanished, but their screams continued to permeate the air. Harry dove behind the bed as Teddy aimed a spell at him. "Stop, Teddy," said Victory. "It's Harry. He's here to help you." "I don't need his help," said Teddy. Harry stood up and pulled the cloak off himself. He and Teddy faced each other, wands at the ready. "Voldemort is lying to you, Teddy," said Harry. "There's nothing he or anyone can do to bring your parents back." "You don't know that. You were just too afraid to try yourself." "Son," Harry replied, sighing. He looked again at the skeletons on the bed. "Have Ginny and I not been a family to you? Have we not loved you, as a mother and father would?" "It's not the same," said Teddy. Tears were falling from his cheeks. "I thought you would understand that, Harry." "Of course I do, but that's the hand we were dealt. We have to be grateful for the family we do have." Harry knelt down. "But don't listen to me. Hear it from them." Harry had picked up the resurrection stone. He span it around in his hand 3 times, focusing on the image of his 2 old friends. Remus and Tonks materialized in front of him. Remus nodded to him. "Watcher, Harry," said Tonks. "Thanks for this. Took you long enough." She and Remus turned to face their son. "Edward Remus Lupin," said Tonks. Her tone reminded Harry very much of Mrs. Weasley. "What are you playing at, kid?" Teddy visibly sank at hearing his mother's voice. He dropped the Elder Wand and fell to his knees. He stared at his parents' ghosts, transfixed. "Why did you not call on us first when you took the stone, Teddy?" Remus said. Teddy's lip quivered. "I thought you would try to talk me out of it, and I was ashamed." "Ashamed of what?" Remus replied. "Of feeling grief? Of missing us? Nothing to be ashamed of, son." Teddy was sobbing heavily now. I just wanted to have a family." Tonks crouched down. "You have a family, kid. Look around you. Look at how many people love you." She gestured to Victory. "You picked a good one there. You'd better hope she can put up with your craziness." She turned to Victory. "What do you say, young lady? Look after this one for us?" Victory wrapped her arms around Teddy's neck. "Until the end of the world." Tonks smiled and stood up. Remus took her hand. "We are very, very proud of you, son," he said. "But you must let us rest now. Put our bodies back where they belong, and accept that this is not our world anymore. Do you understand?" Teddy gazed at his father. "I'm sorry, Dad, Mum. I understand." "You have good people looking out for you, kid," said Tonks. "They're always around, and so are we. In here," she pointed at his chest. "We love you, Teddy." Teddy choked on his sobs. "I love you both." Tonks and Remus turned to Harry. "It is time, Harry," said Remus. Harry nodded. His friends looked utterly peaceful. He wanted so bad to ask. How were his parents, in the beyond? Were they proud of him? Did they know about their grandchildren? What was the beyond like? He had 1,000 questions. Remus seemed to sense his thoughts. He smiled and shook his head gently. Harry dropped the stone, and his friends faded away. "Marry that girl," said the voice of Tonks. "And take a holiday, Harry. Family first." And then they were gone. The shack was silent, apart from the creak of wooden boards with the wind, and occasional weeping sounds from Teddy and Victory. Epilogue. "The wand and stone are safe," said Harry. He sat alone in the headmistress's office, on a chair facing Dumbledore's portrait. Several days had passed since the events in the Shrieking Shack, and it felt, to Harry, that the world was returning to normal. At least, as normal as his life had ever been. Dumbledore nodded. We must do our best to ensure they are never found. The temptation is too great, even for those who have the best intentions. How is young Master Lupin? A little shaken, but he has lots to keep his mind off it. He has a wedding to plan, now, but Voldemort really did a number on him for a couple of days. I can imagine, even from the other side, Tom Riddle continues to spread his particularly powerful brand of evil. Professor? You are going to ask if what he was apparently attempting is possible, something akin to reviving himself, with the body of Remus or Nymphadora as a vessel. Harry stared at the floor. He told Teddy his blood could be found somewhere, but he wasn't technically dead the last time he came back, because of the Horcruxes. Would the spell he used to come back before be enough this time? He waited for an answer. After several seconds, he looked up. Dumbledore, for the first time in Harry's life, looked uncertain. I do not know, Harry. This answer sent a chill through Harry's body. Dumbledore continued. Voldemort now understands death better than he ever has, better than anyone alive. Of course, without the stone, there would be no way to exact his will via another and conceive of a return to the world of the living. But, as we saw with Master Lupin, if he can deceive someone into attempting a revival, he will. This is why it is so important that the stone never resurfaces. Harry nodded. But, why don't you know? You're dead too. Harry, I am the portrait of a dead man. So if you used the stone to summon the real me, I may perhaps have a better answer for you. But 2 points. 1, are you sure you would want that knowledge? And 2, if I did know of such things, I can categorically state I would never tell you or anyone else. Some knowledge is better left unknown, my boy. Harry stood up. I'll have the Aurors search for anywhere that Voldemort could have hidden some of his blood before he died. Any ideas? Dumbledore stroked his beard. I would have them start anywhere he considered important throughout his life. Who would have thought you'd be retracing your steps from the search for the Horcruxes? Who'd have thought, said Harry, sighing. Until next time, Professor. Potter, said a different voice. Harry turned. Another portrait was speaking to him. It was Snape. Before you go. Harry walked over to Snape. He did not look so grumpy, so weary, so bitter in his headmaster portrait. On the contrary, he looked peaceful. What is it, Professor? Harry asked. I heard you named your daughter Lily, Snape said. Harry smiled. Yes. He pulled out his wallet, opened it, and took out a picture. He held the picture up to the portrait. Snape's stoic expression broke. His eyes welled up. She looks like her. She has her eyes. Harry put his wallet away. Professor, I just realized I never thanked... Not necessary, Harry. Your mother would be very proud of you. I wish she could have seen what you created. Harry's eyes took their turn welling up. Thank you for saying that, Professor. Best potions master I ever had. Ha, said Snape. Well, of course I was better than that fool Slughorn. Harry chuckled. Good night, Professor. Snape nodded and walked out the side of his portrait. Harry exited the office. Several noses were blown on handkerchiefs after he left. Well, said Dumbledore, that was lovely, Severus. Harry will not forget that. Dumbledore turned to the side of his canvas, and his eyebrows rose as Snape appeared in it. Snape held out his arms and pulled Dumbledore into a hug. I just realized I never thanked you, Albus, he said. Harry pushed open his front gate and walked up the path to his front door. As he entered, he could hear Ginny and Lily giggling together in the living room. As soon as he stepped into the room, Lily yelled, Daddy! And ran towards him. He picked her up and stroked her hair away from her face. Lil, go pack some clothes, said Harry, bouncing her up and down. "We're going on a holiday." "Right now?" Lily asked, her eyes widening. "Right now," Harry yelled. Lily squealed and leapt to the floor. She sped up the stairs, leaving Harry and Ginny alone. Harry strode to his wife and pulled her close. She threw her arms around his neck, and he was reminded of their first kiss, all those years ago, in Gryffindor Common Room. "Where are we going?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. "Wherever you want," Harry replied. "And when we get back, I think it's time for a career change." Ginny beamed. "Well, what's next, Harry Potter?" Harry shrugged. "I have some things to clear up at the Ministry, and then something completely different. I mean, I have always enjoyed Quidditch."